Hello and welcome back to another episode from Driving Britain. Today we're going to be looking at 20 foods you'll never buy again after knowing how they are made. Now I don't know what sort of foods we're going to be covering or what type of gross things they're going to tell us. I'm just hoping that I don't see anything on the list that I normally eat. Now I know that things like, British black pudding is made from pig's blood. Although when fried it actually tastes a lot better than you would think. Scottish haggis used to be wrapped in sheep's intestines along with meatballs and things like that, but hopefully that's not really something that's done anymore. So what they are going to tell us about, I'm not sure. I just hope that it's going to be nothing that's going to put me or anybody else off eating food again. Now I know that they're saying 20 foods you'll never buy again after knowing how they are made, but I'm hoping it's just things that they're going to try and gross us out with, but that we kind of normally know happens to food and we just kind of accept it as part of the deal. We would prefer it not to happen, but it's just one of them things. Are we going to be lucky? Is that what we're going to come across? Or are we going to be really grossed out and have nothing left to eat by the end of the video? There's only one way to find out.
20 foods you'll never buy again after knowing how they're made. Number 20. Coca-Cola. There are a few beverages as thirst-quenching on a hot summer's day than a crisp, refreshing bottle of Coca-Cola. But there's possibly a chance you'll never drink this again knowing how it's made, what it's made of, and how it interacts with your body. No one except a select few Coca-Cola staff members knows exactly what the Coca-Cola formula is, since it's a heavily guarded trade secret. Although we do know that it contains concentrate, coca leaf, without the cocaine now of course, cola nut, flavoring, acid, and sugar. Somehow,
Forgetting the whole legal side of it, if cans of Coke still had their original ingredients, so we say, would you buy those? Would you choose that above a different type of pop because you knew it was in there? Put your thoughts in the comments. Forget the whole legal side of it and all that, or the health or anything like that, just whether you would do it if it was an option.
all these ingredients and the secret formula come together and create a great thirst-quenching beverage that you can't help but love when the sun's beating down. But it's not all hydration and happiness after consuming Coca-Cola. Some experts believe that it does some pretty weird things to your body. We all know soda is bad for us, so it's probably not surprising to learn that a regular can of Coca-Cola contains about 39 grams of sugar. Studies have shown that sugar.
Now, I might be a little bit off, but I'm sure that a gram of sugar is around about a teaspoon of sugar. So, the size of spoon that you use to lump the sugar in. Isn't that a flat one of those about a gram? And what did he say? 39 grams of sugar per can. Now, I'm not really that health conscious, to be quite honest, but even someone like me that doesn't really pay that much attention to counting individual calories on things and grams of sugar and stuff that often, you kind of generally know what is and isn't good for you. But that does sound like an awful lot, even to my ears.
Sweetened beverages can be linked to the onset of type 2 diabetes, which means that you might be at an increased risk if you consume such drinks often. Coca-Cola and other similar beverages might also make you gain weight due to the calories and sugar, and you might even experience surface stains on your teeth and dental erosion. It's a nice treat, but this drink is certainly not something you should consume every day.
Yeah, let's face it though, this applies to pretty much every single type of similar styled soft drink out there, fizzy drink. And we kind of know and accept that, I think, don't we? You know that if you drink litres of Coke or Fanta or anything else every single day, then you're probably going to run into trouble. But the odd can now and again, or a can with your lunch and stuff, I'm not sure that's a big thing.
Number 19.
Chicken.
Chewing gum. Many people love chewing gum.
I'm not sure what to think about chewing gum.
Sometimes freshens your breath and gives your mouth something to do.
Yeah, but chewing gum's always very vividly coloured, and that makes me a little bit dubious and sceptical to start with before we even get into the video.
There's so much you probably don't know about chewing gum that might have you questioning just how much you chew it. First of all, you're most likely chewing a secretion from sheep's wool. Imagine chewing on wool.
What?
My mouth tingles just thinking about it. Chewing gum contains a waxy secretion from the sebaceous glands of sheep known as lanolin. On the sheep, this makes their wool waterproof.
Can you put that on
But
clothing?
in chewing gum, it gives it that chewiness that we
Isn't lanolin what you put on clothing for waterproofing and stuff?
we love. There are also many other ingredients often included in the gum base, such as glycerol esters from resin and gum resin, polyethylene, and polyvinyl acetate. Then there are
Don't they sound like plastics?
the ingredients that make
I'm not saying they are, I'm just saying they sound like plastics.
gum soft, vegetable oil, and glycerin. And, of course, the sweeteners, like sucralose, xylitol, and sorbitol. Some gums are manufactured for taste, while others are created with medical functions, like giving up smoking, offering nutrition, and increasing alertness. Chewing gum definitely isn't one of the most harmful things you can put in your mouth, but there are some hazards associated with it. It can trigger temporomandibular joint disorder and even cause gastrointestinal problems. You might also experience diarrhea with chewing gum if you're sensitive to artificial sweeteners. Number
Yeah, I think that the sweeteners, that's the thing that I'd probably be the most dubious of than any extra vivid colours. But the artificial sweeteners, I've not really come across anything ever that's shown anything that's encouraged me to think that they're a good idea versus natural sugar in moderation. Now, I know that there's some circumstances where you probably want to use sweeteners to try and cut down the calories in something, and I know that there's plenty of arguments for and against, but I just keep on hearing so many bad things about artificial sweeteners that those bad things, if they really do exist, seem to far outweigh any actual negative aspects of natural sugar. But you've also got to remember that I'm in the UK, where in foodstuffs we do get actual proper granular sugar, real sugar in different foodstuffs. We don't get corn syrup, or at least not anywhere near as much as, say, the US. In the place of things like corn syrup, then I can see where there's probably a pretty even matched sort of argument. But for natural sugars, I'm not sure.
18. Nutella. Nutella contains sugar, modified palm oil, vanillin, cocoa, lecithin, skimmed milk powder, hazelnuts, and whey powder. None of these really sound all that nutritious, and yet Nutella used to be advertised as part of a nutritious breakfast. In reality, it's...
Yeah, but really though, did anybody ever actually spread chocolate spread on their breakfast and genuinely think, oh, I'm doing something really good here, I'm having a step towards a healthy diet with the chocolate spread over their breakfast? I don't think anybody seriously believed that it was in any way healthy, no matter what the company claimed. Or did they? If you really did think that Nutella was in some way good for you and a great idea for breakfast, other than the fact it's going to give you a massive energy boost, then put it in the comment section.
a sweet treat that contains 70% saturated fat and processed sugar by weight. Just 2 tablespoons of Nutella contains 200 calories, 99 of which come from 11 grams of fat and 80 from 21 grams of sugar. According to an online blog, the hazelnut spread's creator, Ferrero, actually came under fire in the United States. They were sued in a class action lawsuit for false advertising, leading people to believe it had health benefits and was nutritional. In the lawsuit, they were sued for health washing and had to pay $3 million to customers named in the lawsuit. The lawsuit also came with a requirement for Ferrero to change their advertising and labeling to avoid making consumers think it was a healthy breakfast staple. There's no denying.
Yeah, but like I say, I know that there's a lawsuit put there and that sort of stuff, and people claiming them because they knew they could. But seriously, though, did people really think that Nutella chocolate spread was going to be a healthy option? Now, that's like claiming that tomato ketchup is part of your 5-a-day veg because it contains tomatoes. Do you know that you might be playing with words enough to try to claim it, but in reality, you know for what it's not. You know that you're cheating yourself because it's something nice that you want to eat. Surely chocolate spread falls way under that sort of category.
Denying that having Nutella on toast is a delicious snack, but it is by no means an overly healthy one. You're probably setting yourself up for a sugar rush, followed by a crash.
Yeah, well, the sugar rush is
Number
where you have it, though, isn't it?
17. Pringles. Look,
Hold on a minute. No, I quite like Pringles. I'm not sure that I want to keep watching this video, and I don't think that I want to know anything bad about Pringles, because that's one of the few crisp type things that I still eat. I don't mind other crisps, it's just that I tend to steer towards Pringles, and I don't just take a couple. They are moreish, and you do eat a lot more than you intend to. So I don't want to know anything bad about Pringles.
Be the first to admit, I love eating potato chips. They're so Moorish and the perfect snack to enjoy on the sofa while you watch your favorite TV show. I'll also be the first to admit that I know they're unhealthy while you watch your favorite TV show. But I'll also be the first to admit that I know they're unhealthy. What I didn't know, though, was just how unhealthy they are.
Well, I know that they're kind of fried in oil and stuff in some sort of way because they're, well, essentially slices of fried potato, aren't they? So that much I get, and that's what I kind of expect. I accept that as part of the deal. Anything that tastes nice is not going to be good for you. That's just a rule, isn't it? If it tastes good, then it's probably bad for you. If it tastes horrible, then it's probably either medicine or good for you.
Especially Pringles.
It's not
According to
scared me from
online resources, the Pringles company wanted to avoid taxes against luxury foods in the UK. So they argued that the potato content of their chips was so low that they technically weren't even potato chips.
What?
I'm sorry.
Hang on a minute. But they're crisps. I thought that they're slices of potato. I know they add rice flour to them to kind of, puff them up a bit. But aren't crisps, well, potato? Well, they don't really say crisps, do they? I'm not sure about this bit.
Pardon? That's right. The potato chips you're eating from a can have the merest hint of our starchy friend. Pringles actually contain rice, wheat, corn, and potato flakes in a weird kind of slurry mixture, which is then pressed into a shape, rolled out into a thin sheet, and cut into shapes. It then moves.
Yeah, I think that kind of that part of it, I guess I already knew, and I think that I thought that there was more potato to it, but I knew that that was bulked out with rice flour. I didn't know that it was so heavily bulked out with rice flour. And that also then raises a question, why don't they just make them with rice flour and then they'll also be gluten-free and they can sell to the celiac market as well, by the way.
Forward on a conveyor belt and is pressed into molds to ensure they all stack neatly in those frustrating cans you get your hands stuck in. The molds then move through boiling oil before being sprayed with powdered flavors. This doesn't sound all that great, to be fair, but could the worst be yet to come? Probably.
Oh, no.
According to online sources, a cancer-causing chemical called acrylamide is created when carb-rich foods like potatoes are cooked at high temperatures. It can be found in many everyday things like water. Still, an analysis by Environmental Law Foundation found that all potato chip products they tested exceeded legal limits by 39 times and up to 910 times.
Now that's a lot, and that's bad. That's not the sort of thing that you'd expect to be getting from a Pringle. Eating too many Pringles, I expect to get another inch around my waist, not the potential of getting cancers. And I don't suppose this is just down to Pringles, because he actually said foods cooked in hot oil, so isn't that opening up the market towards all crisps, which are deep fried in some sort, or flash fried in some sort of way? So does that mean that all of the crisp products that we eat fall in that category and not just specifically Pringles? Or is there something different and unique about the way that Pringles cook their stuff compared to everyone else? Because having a food that might make you gain a bit of weight is one thing, but something that's got genuine health risks, then that's a completely different thing. If anybody knows, add that to the comment section. I think that everybody would be interested to know anything that you've got to say about that.
Number 16. Instant noodles.
Oh no, come on, you've already had my Pringles. I like instant noodles, you can't take them as well.
Let's face it, most of us have reached into our pantry at one time or another for a packet of instant noodles. They're easy to cook, take minimal preparation, and can be pretty delicious. But if you knew how they were made and what they contained, you might be having them less often. Instant noodles are designed to have a long shelf life, so it doesn't take a genius to work out that they are pretty processed. They also have very little nutritional content on their own, are typically high in fat, sodium, and calories, and often have extra bits and bobs like flavorings, additives, preservatives, and artificial colors. Some instant noodles also contain monosodium glutamate, also known as MSG, and tertiary butyl hydroquinone, a chemical preservative from the petroleum industry. Recent studies haven't been painting
that
a
sounds
super great
appetizing.
picture of instant noodles. One said that excessive consumption of instant noodles might trigger obesity and lead to other conditions like diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, and heart problems. Most instant noodles feature maida, which is wheat flour that has been milled, refined, and bleached. It's rich in flavor but extremely processed and has minimal to no nutritional value. Studies have also found that maida-based noodles can wreak havoc on our digestive health, and some remnants might even reach the appendix and trigger an infection.
You would really expect something that's such a cheap, readily available product as a noodle to be, well, amongst the least processed foods out there. You know that it's not going to be good for you, it's going to be fried again in some sort of way, or it's going to contain a lot more calories than what it looks like it's probably going to contain. But you don't expect it to be quite that bad for you. The risk of infection and things like that from a noodle. I would have thought that it's just some type of, reprocessed pasta squeezed out into or extruded into strands, a little pack of seasoning dropped on it, a pile of salt, and a glug of oil. That's what I thought you're pretty much getting it. Now, it's not a healthy meal. You don't have it as a healthy meal. You have it as some type of stopover meal, a snack in between meals or something like that, or you stick other things with it to make up an actual meal. But that sounded a lot more, should we say, serious than face value. I'm not sure if I really feel like eating too many more of those noodles.
Number 15. Kazu Martsu.
What on earth is that?
Imagine a food being so downright
Now, even I know that doesn't look edible.
disgusting and awful that it's actually illegal. That's the
Should
case
hope it
with
is.
Kazu Martsu, also known as maggot cheese. This cheese
I'm all for not paying that much attention to sell-by dates and use-by dates on food products, but if it's got maggots in it, then even I know that you really shouldn't be eating it. And more to the point, why would somebody want to eat it?
comes from the Mediterranean island of Sardinia and has sheep milk and live insect larvae,
That's just
also known
filth.
as maggots. It comes from Pecorino, but this cheese is taken far beyond the traditional fermentation stage, all the way to decomposition. The larvae of the cheese fly are
Why would you do
deliberately
that?
put inside the cheese and break down the cheese fat. As a result, the cheese becomes soft and even has liquid seeping out of it. But that's not even the grossest part. After
How did somebody come to the conclusion that that would be a good thing and an appetizing thing to want to eat? Now, I get that kind of your cheese and yogurts and that sort of stuff, they're kind of a bit counterintuitive type foods to how we see things anyway, curdled milk and all that sort of stuff. But that's a bit different to whatever that stuff is. That's not cheese, that's just some sort of rotted, fetid stuff.
dining on all the cheese fat, the larvae are left inside the cheese, and people eat it with the maggots. In fact, some Sardinian people only think the cheese is unsafe once the maggots have died. Most people
Add to the comment section if you think that looks like a really appetizing thing and you'd like to have a big scoop of that on top of some crackers. A nice little snack between meals or something. A big lump of fetid cheese that's got maggots and flies crawling around it. Is that the sort of thing that you think is appetizing? If you've eaten it, then definitely add your comment to the comment section. I really want to know what it tastes like. I don't want to personally know what it tastes like. I want somebody else to tell me what it tastes like to see if it's as bad as what I would expect.
serve the cheese cut into thin strips and spread onto flatbread. They then eat it with a robust red wine. As you might have guessed,
Yeah, I'd probably cut it into cubes because that way it'll be easier to store in the bin.
scientists and medical professionals advise against eating this cheese. They say it's possible
why
for
is
the
that?
larva to survive in your stomach acid, remain in the intestine, and cause a condition called pseudomyosis. This is a parasitic infestation that can sometimes lead to sores, irritation, and other uncomfortable symptoms. The cheese has been outlawed, and offenders face expensive fines if they are caught selling it. However, some Sardinians make and sell Kazu Martsu on the black market. Number 14.
That's just wrong, though, isn't it?
Jelly beans.
What's wrong with jelly
Jelly
beans?
beans are a delicious but very sugary treat. They are bright, colorful, and very Moorish. But you
don't
might
know
not let
about
another one
jalapenos.
pass through your lips when you learn what makes them hard and shiny. Spoiler alert, it's poo. Okay, so it's less horrific than you think,
Nice.
and you might even give jelly bean makers points for sustainability and creativity. They're coated in something called shellac, which is a resin that the female lac bug secretes after she drinks
Yeah, isn't shellac something that you put on wood?
tree sap. Lac bugs come from forests in India and Thailand, and they deposit their shellac onto the branches and twigs. People then come in and harvest it before processing it into flakes. Once it's in flake form, it's dissolved in ethanol and sprayed onto a wide range of products like hardwood flooring, fingernails, and, you guessed it, jelly beans. It's even often used to
Why would you put... Well, firstly, I didn't know that shellac came from that. I thought it was some type of... Well, I don't know what... some type of wax is what I thought. Some type of natural wax. I'm not sure where I thought it was from. I never really thought about it. I didn't know it was from insects. But surely there's something better to give a glossy finish to a jelly bean with than crushed up insects. And I can see that he's about to point out the wax that they've been putting on fruit as well. I know that they seal it in wax to make it stay fresher for longer because oxygen can't penetrate it and start it to decompose. But you can't get it back off. Yeah, you're running hot water on it, rubbing it with a cloth. You've got no choice but to eat it. And well, if I wanted wax, then I'd probably break out the pack of candles. And I really don't fancy eating them. I'd much prefer just to have, well, an apple. But they won't let us, will they? They keep putting it on our foods.
replace the natural wax found on apples, which is removed during the cleaning process. As shellac is an animal byproduct, jelly beans are not suitable for vegans, and you might see it listed on ingredient packaging as E904. Number 13. Cheese. We are
What's
a
wrong with
nation of
cheese?
cheese lovers, with the exclusion of maggoty cheese, of course, and all cheese
Yeah.
is made with the same basic ingredient, milk, and an enzyme. We've been eating cheese for at least 8,000 years, and it's thought to have come from Asia Minor to ancient Rome, with the Roman Empire going crazy with artisanal cheese making. They loved it. Making cheese is fairly complex. It requires
Hang on, he's already had my Pringles, he's taken away my fizzy pop, he's stopped me from eating noodles, he's not having my cheese as well. I like cheese.
milk, an enzyme for coagulation and to help it set, and a method for removing excess water. Once the basics are out of the way, the cheese can be aged, flavored, and cut in many different ways. But the way we manufacture cheese is far less gross now than it used to be. Experts think that the origins of cheese probably came from the stomach of a sheep. Sheep were domesticated around 8000 BCE and were known to be desirable sources of milk, meat, and wool. However, their stomachs were also put to good use. Once removed from their bodies, people used them to transport fresh milk. But what people didn't know back then was that the stomach of a sheep contains rennin, which is an enzyme we use to make cheese. Over long distances, milk transported in sheep stomachs would curdle and turn into curds. Therefore, cheese curds might have been the first type of cheese we started eating.
Yeah, like I say though, I know that haggis used to be kept well, I think it still is when it's traditionally made. And original faggots, like kind of a meatball type thing, I'm sure that they used to be, or in some places may still be, put into intestines the same. I know that many people wouldn't buy that. But for its traditional sort of original cooking, then I think that that's what they used to do. So I'm not too bothered about this one. He's not told me anything that's going to steer me away from cheese. Telling me how it used to be made, I don't mind that. Telling me it's still made like that, that would probably not make me want to run for the next pack of cheese. But because they used to do it back in the day, I don't care about that.
Number 12. Vanilla flavoring. If you've ever eaten a delicious vanilla-flavored treat, pay
Hey,
attention
a lot
to
of
the
vanilla
ingredients
flavor.
listed on the packaging. If it says natural flavoring and your treat was far more expensive than other vanilla-flavored goods, you might be eating beaver bum goop. After you've taken a break,
What? I thought that we got vanilla from, well, usually it says Madagascar vanilla, doesn't it? Madagascar vanilla extracts. Or is that just the vanilla pods?
to vomit, I'll explain what I mean. Beavers secrete a goop out of their butts called castoreum, which is something they use to mark their territory. Castoreum is listed as an additive by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which they describe as generally regarded as safe. And this beaver goop has been used in food and perfumes for at least 90 plus years.
Who even discovered that?
If you were to stick your face in the butt of a beaver, you wouldn't smell something awful. Instead, you'd smell a musty, vanilla-like scent. You'd also spot a brown, molasses-like slime. While most animals have quite gross-smelling anal secretions, the beaver's diet of bark and leaves makes their smell quite lovely. As you have to...
Yeah, I don't care what it eats. I'm not going to be readily grasping for something that's come from a beaver's bum and then spreading it around my food. Next time I eat anything that's got vanilla in it, I'm going to be looking for something that just comes up with an ominous name of, I don't know, flavourings or something like that. I want to see it say Madagascar vanilla pods or something like that. Something where I know that it's going to have come from actual pods. Or I'll just buy strawberry flavour or something like that. I don't think that's one of the things that I want to be eating.
To anesthetize beavers to milk their anuses. Alright, another vomit break. Only around 200.
Again, how did somebody even discover this? How did they come around to that conclusion? And who was it who picked up the first beaver turd thinking, I think I'll eat that. Oh, it tastes quite nice. Let's get some more. In fact, I'll knock the beaver out so we can squeeze out a bit more. How do these things happen?
292 pounds are produced each year. So most vanilla-flavored products you purchase come from synthetic vanillin, a compound found in natural vanilla from wood pulp or guaiacol, a petroleum
Natural
derivative.
flavours. That's such an ominous statement.
Number 11. Red Bull Energy Drink.
Oh, hang on a minute. No. You've taken my Pringles, you've had my noodles, you've taken away all type of vanilla products. You are not taking my Red Bull. It's one of the very few drinks that I still actually drink in fizzy pop type forms. Unless you tell me it's going to make my eyes fall out, my head fall off, and I don't know, grow 5 arms or something like that, then you're not having my Red Bull.
We all know that energy drinks like Red Bull are a sometimes beverage, as in it's generally not good for you to consume them often. But the sugar and caffeine content probably isn't why you would stop drinking Red Bull. It's likely more to do with the rumors about bull semen being one of the main ingredients.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're going to be talking about taurine, aren't they? Because there was some big scandal that went on saying that taurine was taken straight from the actual bull's balls. But it was a load of rubbish. It's just synthetic. You know, it's made in laboratories nowadays. It's not from animals.
Before you spit out your drink, I'll dispel that rumor real quick. Red Bull doesn't contain bull semen, but I'll explain why people thought it did. Red Bull and many other energy drinks contain taurine. Taurine is a byproduct of sulfurous amino acids, and it was named after the Latin word taurus, which means bull or ox. Taurine used to be extracted from ox bile and bull semen. The human body uses taurine to reduce stress and control anxiety, since it's known to...
Again, I am wondering how somebody actually came up with the process and the inclination to even discover taurine in the first place. It comes from bile and semen. So how did they discover it? What was their experiment, their thinking and their idea behind, I'm going to have a look around these things. Just wondering.
To lower cortisol levels while improving endurance and performance. It's found in animal tissues, but we also have it in our own intestines. Knowing that it can also come from bull semen, people assumed it was in Red Bull, and a Texas company even claimed to have tested the drink and found bull sperm in it. But that's not...
Yeah, did they happen to be selling their own product at the same time? Which apparently didn't.
True. The taurine in Red Bull is synthetically produced in laboratories.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 10.
At least that's a relief. I get to keep my Red Bull. I can't eat anything else, but apparently I've still got a drink to drink. Oh, unless it's coloured red.
Red food. The next time you tuck into your favorite red snack, take a moment to ponder how the manufacturer managed to produce that red color. It's bugs. They used bugs. If you ever see any...
Oh, come on, with the state of technology nowadays, surely there's a better way of making something coloured red for you to have to not to scrape a load of bugs off a plant and crush them up, which is what it looked like they've just done there. Surely we've moved on since then. Didn't they used to do things like that to paint tribal paintings on cave walls and things like that when humans were first kind of working out how to make symbols? And we're still doing that for our foods. Come on, we must have moved past that by now, surely.
products listed with ingredients like natural red 4, cochineal extract, or carmine, you know your food contains a crushed up little bug. The bug is called the cochineal, and only the female ones are used to produce red coloring. It all began in the 1500s when Europeans started making their way into South America. They noticed that the Aztecs were producing beautiful dyed fabrics, and the colors stayed vibrant for a long time, so dried cochineal bugs became
fabrics. They made their clothes look bright red with it. They didn't eat it.
a hot commodity. These days, most cochineals we use for red coloring come from the Canary Islands and Peru. They are taken from prickly pear cacti, dried in the sun, crushed, and dunked in an acidic alcohol solution to make carminic acid. This pigment becomes the cochineal extract, and about 70,000 of the bugs are needed for just 1 pound of dye. Many manufacturers prefer using bugs for red dye because it doesn't have any known health risks, although it is an allergen and, of course, isn't vegan. The alternative would be a synthetic red dye, like red number 2 and red number 4, both of which often have more health risks and are byproducts of coal or petroleum. So it's your choice, bugs or...
Well, that's a great choice, isn't it? We either have something that comes from a petroleum company and inherently probably isn't going to be anything that you're going to want to consume, not unless you're, well, an engine, or we eat a load of bugs. Yeah, can't we just do away with the red colour and have, I don't know. I'm happy to eat grey foods if it doesn't mean eating petrol or bugs.
Coal. Number 9. Processed meat. As a nation, we love meat. We love sausages, hot dogs, salami, bacon, ham, smoked meat, dried meat, canned meat, beef jerky, the list goes on. But what all these meat types have in common is that they are all processed, which means they go through a curing, drying, canning, salting, and smoking process. Sure, most people love the occasional processed meat treat, but did you know that it's not all that good for you? Some studies have shown a consistent link between processed meat and chronic diseases. You might be more at risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, heart disease, high blood pressure, and bowel and stomach cancer. Though it's worth telling you that
that's not very good at all. Yeah, you'd expect processed meat to be not as good for you as, obviously, fresh meat or something. But you just assume that it's not good for you as in calorie count, just general health, obesity, things like that. Not because it can potentially give you diseases and death.
That if you eat processed meat often, you might be more likely to get such illnesses, but there currently isn't any evidence to suggest that processed meat causes them. You might also...
Well, who would do the research for it, though? The fact that there's not any research there doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, not at all, because say if you're talking about 4 or 5 different types of processed meat, the only people that's going to do any research into whether it's going to kill people are the companies themselves to prove that their product doesn't. And if you've got a combination of different foods all in the same kind of processed meat category, then that means all of those companies and food type groups collaborating to then conduct research to see if it's carcinogenic or causing cancers or causing death or whatever. And they're not going to do that, are they? Why would any company run a piece of research that they think might put them out of business or show their product in a bad light? So you're certainly not going to get half a dozen companies or food suppliers, creators of these different processed meats. They're not all going to collaborate because it's not in their interest. The only time that's going to be looked at is if an external body looks at the effects of that food, and they're only ever going to look at one of those food types. They're never going to look at the effect of if you eat a variety of them. And longitudinal studies where they're looking at the long-term effects of these different foods, they're very rarely done for any food. So the fact that there's no current research to say just how potentially dangerous or good, whatever, the food could be for you, though I'd include the good just to be fair, but let's face it, it's not going to be. It's processed meat, it's going to be bad for you. You know and understand that, but you think in the terms of obesity, not in the terms of actual genuine health risks. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. Put in the comment section what your previous views of processed meat were. You probably thought that it wasn't particularly healthy for you, but did you just think as in terms of weight gain and just obviously not going to be as good because it's processed? additional salt or something maybe? Or did you think that it was potentially actually dangerous?
Be more likely to have other bad habits if you eat lots of processed meat, and these bad habits, like smoking and excess alcohol consumption, might also contribute. According to current evidence, 3 chemicals have been linked to colorectal.
Yeah, but the big problem is, look at that. The sausages with the cheese on, they look really nice. That makes me want to eat one of those right now. So we're not going to stop eating it. But it would be nice to know just how dangerous that really is.
Cancer, one that's found naturally in meat, and 2 others that develop or are added during their processing. These include heme, naturally found in red meat, nitrates and nitrites that are added to keep processed meat fresher for longer, and heterocyclic and polycyclic amines, which occur when meat is cooked at high temperatures. Number 8.
If a food already has a very small but potential chance of causing cancers in people because of naturally occurring parts of that food, then that in itself is bad enough, but probably an accepted risk because we need food, we have to eat. But then adding additional things to it that you know also have dangerous properties to them, or potentially dangerous properties, then that just seems like you're stacking the odds against healthy eating, against humans basically, aren't you? Why would you then start stacking on more things that you know are also quite bad? And we're not just talking about make you a little bit heavier or something like that. We're on about genuine health risks, cancers and stuff like that. Why would companies do that other than the obvious profit, money?
Honey. We are often told how good honey is for us. It's a natural sweetener, an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, and an antibacterial agent.
Honey has surely got to be one of the safest things out there. Yeah, the honey pulled out of the Egyptian tombs is still said to be good enough to be able to eat because it has natural antibacterial properties to it, doesn't? I thought that honey was about as safe as it gets, provided you're obviously not allergic to honey or something like that.
Even use it to treat burns, coughs, and wounds. But it could also make you very, very sick. There's something called mad honey poisoning, and it's an illness that can happen when you ingest honey containing granotoxins from plants from the Ericaceae family, like rhododendrons. Granotoxins are neurotoxins and can severely affect your muscles and nerves. If you get mad honey poisoning, you can experience dizziness, weakness, nausea, vomiting, hypersalivation, excess perspiration, and paresthesia. Some people
Okay, yeah, I kind of see where they're going with this because I'm sure that rhododendrons, I'm sure that there's, I don't know, haven't they got hallucinogenic properties or pretty bad stuff from it and things like that? I'm sure that they're in that sort of category. It's not that they're necessarily anything wrong with the honey, it's just where the honeys have been collecting the pollen and that might be getting transferred through. Although anything that's got the word mad at the beginning of it can't be a good thing for you, so you're probably not going to want to consume it. But this looks like a pretty isolated, narrow set of circumstances on when you would come across this.
People even have low blood pressure and go into shock. The World Health Organization said you should not be giving honey to infants under 1 year old, and the risk of mad honey poisoning is definitely one of the reasons why. In saying that, the other reason is that honey can contain Clostridium botulinum spores, which can lead to botulism. Now, most people are not at risk of mad honey poisoning.
How does it keep hold of the spores to be able to cause botulism? Like I said earlier, I thought that honey had natural properties in it that broke down any type of bacteria. That's why it kind of lasts forever, near enough. If you know anything more about that, add it to the comment section. I would be interested to work out how come there's some things getting through that's kind of not generally mentioned. Also, rhododendrons, unless you're going to get a whole field full of them, then surely you're not going to get that much.
Especially if they buy honey from reliable sources. However, people living or traveling in the Black Sea region of Turkey are being told to take care, since poisoning has been reported in this area.
I don't understand that. What they're doing is the rhododendron farms there where there's a whole field full of them, because otherwise you would think that it would be difficult for there to be that much kind of cross-contamination via the bees from the plant to influence the honey in that sort of measure. You'd think that, say if you're on about a poppy field, then you'd expect there to be quite a lot of extracts from the poppy going through to the honey. But general plants that you get around in nature, you wouldn't think that they'll be in big enough clusters to influence it. I mean, obviously they are, because they're talking about it and they've got actual specific examples. Well, you learn something every day, and not necessarily something that you wanted to know.
Number 7. Gelatin. If you love...
Yeah, I'm expecting this to be something to do with burning bones or something. Maybe it's going to be worse than I thought.
Yogurt, ice cream, marshmallows, candy, puddings, cakes, and other delicious sweet treats, you might be a little disturbed to learn about one of the main ingredients. It's gelatin, and it's made from a protein that manufacturers obtain by boiling down bones, ligaments, tendons, and skin from cows and pigs. Gelatin is see-through, flavorless, and colorless, and is brittle when dry and rubbery when wet. Knowing this information about gelatin is enough to make your stomach turn, even if the...
Yeah, this is one of those things where, like I said at the very beginning of the video, one of the things that you know happens in processing of foods and some of the stuff that goes in foods, things that you'd much prefer not to be the case, but that you have to accept is part of the deal with the foods that we eat. And gelatin's one of the things that I was thinking about with it. I would obviously much prefer not to be eating things that have come through that sort of process. But realistically, to eat a general balanced diet, unless you're vegetarian or vegan or something like that, then you're going to come in contact with it, and that's just how it is. As long as I'm not the one having to do the processing, then I can kind of ignore it and accept it enough to be able to get along and just eat the jelly beans or whatever it's been dumped in without thinking too much about it.
finished product is delicious. Gelatin is also used in products you can't eat, such as shampoo, cosmetics, and face masks. It's such a versatile product that about 620,000 tons of it were produced in 2019, with most of it coming from the meat and leather industries as a byproduct. Fortunately, you can avoid gelatin. You just have to give up all your favorite treats and opt for vegan alternatives. There's a product called Agar Agar that vegan product...
Yeah, that's what I say. Now, yeah, you could take that path, and a lot of people do choose to. But at the same time, I think that if you wanted to eat a normal balanced diet without it in any way having anything gross involved, then you're just going to be out of luck, because all of our food sources, there's something gross somewhere along the path with pretty much all of it, isn't there?
Manufacturers use as a similar alternative. Rather than being made from body parts, it uses a type of seaweed. Number 6.
Well, you'd think that there'll be pretty big supplies of seaweed, since we're mostly water on the planet and all that sort of stuff. So if that's a viable thing, then why isn't that just done anyway?
Peanut butter. Peanut butter is one of those spreads that you either love or hate, and if you...
Yeah, I quite like peanut butter, so I'm not sure if I want to watch this. He's taken about 5 or 6 foods off me and almost pushed me away from Red Bull until I realised he's only on about taurine. I'm not sure that I'm prepared to put up with him steering me away from peanut butter. That's one of the things that I quite like.
If you love it, get ready to hate it. Sure, there's plenty to love about peanut butter. The decent, high-quality stuff has plenty of niacin, thiamine, folate, magnesium, and polyphenols. But it also has naturally occurring aflatoxins, or mycotoxins. These come from the Aspergillus fungus family, and peanuts are particularly susceptible to the fungus. Our livers metabolize the toxins, and at high doses, they can actually become carcinogenic. In studies, high levels of aflatoxin in the blood were thought to be linked to stunted growth in children. And that's pretty bad, but that's not all there is to hate about peanut butter. There's also the rat hair. The FDA calls it a natural contaminant along with insect.
A natural contaminant isn't rats in my peanut butter. Natural contaminant is a bit of dust falling in it.
Parts, but it's a horrific thought as you chow down on your peanut butter on toast. Some experts believe there could be as many as 30 insect pieces in 100 grams of peanut butter, and one or...
In just 100 grams? That's not a lot of peanut butter. That's almost as many bugs as what there is peanut butter at that sort of ratio. That's just gross, that is. Surely they must be able to keep a more sterile environment for producing peanut butter than that.
More rodent hairs. Most people aren't going to be affected by these contaminants, at least not physically. But if you have asthma or an allergy, you might experience some irritation.
Yeah, but why is the rats running over the peanut butter anyway? Or over the actual peanuts? You would think that factories producing food have a pretty high level of hygiene. And you would think that that would include not allowing rats and other bugs and whatever else to be running around the food that they're producing. Yeah, they're specifically highlighting peanut butter. They're not coming up with jam or any type of spread or something like that. So there's obviously, I know that it's probably a little bit more attractive to some of the animals because of the nuts, but I don't know, why is it such a problem for peanut butter, and why is it allowed to happen? Surely there must be enough things in place so that doesn't happen.
Number 5. Marshmallows. Marshmallows are delicious, especially when stabbed onto a stick and placed over a roaring campfire. You can then bite through the crusty exterior and enjoy the delightful gooiness inside. And we all know that marshmallows aren't good for us. After all, they are mainly sugar. But sugar is not the only potential problem with marshmallows. So is how we prepare them. If you regularly eat burned marshmallows, whether you cook them on a campfire or over a gas cooker, you might experience health consequences in the future. Burned foods have compounds linked to severe health conditions like cancer, kidney problems, and diabetes.
Yeah, I don't suppose anybody's eating marshmallows thinking that they're in any way healthy for you. So I don't think the marshmallow itself's the problem, or any more than what you'd expect it to be. But yeah, I know that burning foods is supposed to be quite carcinogenic and related to causing cancers. Things like overcooking stuff on barbecues or grilling foods. If you make cheese on toast and you make it so it's nice and brown and extra crispy on the top, that's supposed to be really bad for you. And that's the same with, I guess, the marshmallows. When you start to see the blackened edges to food, then that's what's supposed to be potentially carcinogenic, which basically, leading to cancers and things. I don't know how strong the relationship or effect is, but I know that about 5 or 6, 7 years ago there was quite a big thing about it being released into the media networks and that sort of stuff. If anybody knows just how strong the link is, then it will be quite a helpful thing to add to the comment section.
Any food you char, burn, barbecue, or smoke definitely tastes great, but you might be eating food with toxins in them, such as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. The longer you cook your food and the closer you place it to the heat source, the more of these toxins they might contain. Then there's the fact that marshmallows pretty much have no nutrients. They are primarily carbs and sugar.
Yeah, but come on, nobody eats a big chunk of marshmallow expecting it to be a nutritious sort of meal of some sort. You know you're eating a big blob of sticky tasting sugar.
There are no huge amounts of vitamins and minerals, next to no protein and no fats or dietary fiber. Number 4. Sour candy. If you're a fan of sour candy, you might be curious about how manufacturers.
I'm starting to believe that this video is actually directed specifically towards me, because it's named most of the foods that I eat. I like cheese on toast and things like that where it's been nicely baked and blackened, even though I don't do it as much anymore because I remember, like I say, it being carcinogenic and a bit harmful. But I also really like sour jelly sweets. I don't think there's anything on this list other than that mouldy weird cheese thing that I was trying to pass off as food. But other than that, I think he's just been raiding my cupboard and made a video about it.
Make the candy so sour. Some variants are so potent that you can't help but screw your eyes up and need a glass of water to give your tongue some much needed relief. There are a number of different acids that go into the creation of sour candy. The most common is, of course, citric acid, which is naturally found in citrus fruits like grapefruit, lemons, and even some berry varieties. Citric acid is an antioxidant, and it's even been used to prevent kidney stones. But it's not the only acid present in sour candy. If you've ever had that super potent sour candy, like Warheads, you've likely experienced malic acid. It gives candy its intense flavor, but is also present naturally in our bodies and within Granny Smith apples, cherries, tomatoes, and apricots. Some sour candy.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing as well. Yeah, in the UK, kids, not so much nowadays, but when you get apple trees and pear trees and things, kids used to go out what we used to call scrumping, which is basically you kind of sneak into somebody's garden and climb up their apple tree and nick a few of their apples and then run off. Just a harmless type thing for younger kids to be doing and not really meant with any actual malicious intent. But one of the things that I used to do was aim more at the one tree that wasn't very far away because it had cooking apples on it. And not only were they really nice and sharp, but there was also twice the size. So I purposely used to go for the cooking apple tree. I know that if you eat too many cooking apples, it can give you an upset stomach and stuff, but I don't think we ever used to nick enough for it to really have that effect. I think nowadays, if you climbed into somebody's garden, whether it's the front of the house or around the side or anything like that, anywhere associated with somebody's house, you went climbing up the tree trying to nick one of their apples, I think that nowadays you'd probably be met with a bit more hostility than when I was growing up. But that's because things are changing, and they're changing quite quick, and not necessarily for the better. So before you send your kids out scrumping, think about your neighbours first. Think about what they're like, how they might receive the gesture.
Manufacturers also use ascorbic acid, known as vitamin C. There's also fumaric acid, which some people say produces some of the most potent sourness while also lasting longer. It's even naturally occurring in tomatoes, apples, carrots, and beans. Finally, tartaric acid. Tartaric acid is found naturally in grapes, tamarinds, bananas, and wine, and is used to make baking powder and cream of tartar. Number 3.
Yeah, I didn't really hear anything in that was making me think I shouldn't be eating them, because there's lots of things that sound like they're processed or perhaps even made in laboratories rather than taken from natural foods. But at the same time, I don't think I heard anything in that made me think I'm not going to eat them again, which I'm quite pleased about. So really, I'm just going to be stuck living on Red Bull and sour sweets, with the option of perhaps potentially pushing about out and eating the odd noodle. Although I come across one of the super noodles the other day, and it had been made in a different sort of way, so that when you open it out the packet and you go to stick it in the bowl with hot water, you also had the choice just to eat it raw. They had in some way cooked it first, and I thought, well, I don't like the idea of that, but I tried a bit of it and it's actually really, really nice. So I purposely went out trying to buy more noodles that was just like it, where they're already in some way partly cooked, but I couldn't find them. All the ones that I looked at, they all have cook first as part of the serving suggestions and cooking guide and stuff. So I don't know what was different about that one packet, and I don't know where I got it from. If anybody knows that and in any way associated or have memories of shops in the UK, be nice one to add to the comment section, because I will be hunting them down, despite what he's just told me about noodles.
Fugu. Fugu, also known as blowfish or pufferfish, is one of the deadliest sea creatures in the world. Most of us would stay well away from it knowing this, but some curious chefs clearly like to challenge and decided they'd devise a way to eat them and try not to kill themselves and their customers. Sometimes they succeed, and sometimes they don't. Dozens of people die from eating pufferfish each year. These fish are a delicacy in Japan and a select few other countries, but they are incredibly dangerous. They contain a potent neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, and enough of it to kill over 30 adults. And that's after it's been filleted for consumption. Now, if you fillet it properly, there's no toxin and you live. But if you fillet it wrong, you die. You're playing a dangerous game just for a piece.
Yeah, I think the pufferfish, no matter what credentials the chef had, I think that's just one of those things that I would just avoid. I wouldn't bother trying it.
To fugu sushi. But not just anyone can prepare fugu for sale. You have to have a license, and there are only a select few people who hold such a license. Once the fish is killed, the chef cuts open the head to remove the brain and eyes, which are then placed on a tray marked non-edible. The chef will then remove the skin before cutting at the guts. The guts are typically the most poisonous part, including the ovaries, liver, and intestines. It's believed the poison within the body of a fugu is about 200 times more potent than cyanide. Number 2.
Yeah, that just sounds like a very good reason not to eat it. There's probably lots of things that you could process in a way that allows you to eat it that are otherwise very, very harmful. Or you could just not eat them.
Raw oysters. Raw oysters
Why would
are
you
a
eat
delicacy,
raw oysters?
and many people love visiting their local raw oyster bars for a chance to dine on this delicious treat. And yeah, before you say it, I know they're an acquired taste, and not everyone likes raw oysters. In fact, some people say it's like eating snot, but let's...
Yeah, and that's also exactly what it looks like as well. If I think of something that I think might be appetizing to eat, that isn't what I picture in my mind.
Say you do like eating raw oysters. Would you stop eating them if you knew you might be at risk of serious illness? A bacteria called Vibrio is found naturally in coastal waters where oysters like to live. As oysters filter water while feeding, the bacteria can end up in their tissues. When you eat raw or undercooked oysters, that bacteria can make you sick. Some people experience diarrhea and vomiting, which can be awful enough, but some also develop serious problems like bloodstream infections and blistering skin lesions. And these can...
Yeah, that sounds like all good reasons not to be eating any of that. And if they're found in coastal waters close to the shore and stuff, most countries are pumping stuff from their factories and sewage and all sorts of really bad things into their coastal waters. So anything coming from a coastal area, yeah, I'm not sure that you're going to really want to be racing to eat it in the first place. And if you are, then you really need to be cooking it. Eating it raw, that's just a bad idea overall, especially some sort of fish product. You know, it's just something that you should be cooking thoroughly anyway, let alone something from coastal waters.
Can be so severe that people require limb amputations and intensive care. Up to 30% of infections are fatal. The best way to avoid getting sick from harmful bacteria is by cooking your oysters properly. Number 1.
Yeah,
fishy beer. You might
What?
assume it's easy for vegans to know what they can eat, but it's not always obvious what contains animal byproducts and what doesn't. Beer,
Why would there be fish in beer?
for example, includes hops, water, barley, malt, and yeast, but who would have thought it also contains fish swim bladders? Some of your favorite beer varieties might contain fish, and you didn't even know it. It's called isinglass, and it's a type of gelatin from the fish organ that both small and large breweries use. Apparently, beer brewers have been using swim bladders since the 19th century as a way to make beer bright, clear, and more attractive to people wishing to quench their thirst.
I've often heard about all sorts of things going into beers, but I've never heard of that. If this is something that you're hearing for the first time as well, put it in the comment section, or is it just me?
Fortunately, many breweries are starting to step away from the practice. After all, there's no way to glamorize filtering beer through dead fish in your marketing materials. Some breweries are now steering away from finding agents like the fish altogether.
Yeah, this is an American video, so is this just what happens is in America? Is this how Americans process beer, or is this how all breweries do it? Is it the same throughout Europe and other countries? All about right across the globe, you know, Russia, China.
And many are opting for vegetarian-friendly alternatives like derivatives of seaweed and algae Irish moss. It's only natural to get a little snackish sometimes and reach for any food or beverage you've just learned about, but
Yeah, I don't think that I've heard about anything that's really very good. But at the same time, I'm not sure how much of those food products I'm going to stay away from because of anything that is said. I think I'll be a bit more mindful of some of the things that we've come across. But will it stop me eating any of them? I'm not sure it will. What about you? Put in the comment section anything that you've just seen that you're now no longer going to eat or drink because of what you've just seen. Is there anything else that you know goes into food that's really, really gross? Add it to the comment section so we know what to avoid. Okay, I think that he's at the end of his video, so I think we'll leave our video there as well. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.